Okay, great to see you. Welcome back. So I want to have a quick chat today about some Warhammer books that you might be interested in reading and just my general thoughts and experiences about Warhammer and the books that I've been reading. So my wife got involved in Warhammer a few years back with the building the models, etc. and the playing games. I was interested in the stories behind the characters and I wanted to know more about them. So I had a chat with Patrick, whose Warhammer shop is in Publica, which is an amazing shop, and he's an amazing guy. Please go and see him for any Warhammer related questions or purchases that you might need to make. And he recommended these ones. Here we go, the Horus Heresy from the Dark Library series. I had a look at a few other books. I'd read a few short stories. I'd looked at some of the characters in those stories before, and I couldn't quite piece together what was actually happening. So he recommended the plotline from the Horus Heresy, the main idea of betrayal, of corruption, and following that story through, and that would give me the background to the Warhammer story that I really was after. So I did that, and I started reading, and obviously I started with book number 1, the Horus Rising storyline, and yeah, it was a struggle, I admit. I'm not a big fan of the very small sort of typeset books, but from the get-go there were a lot of names, a lot of history, a lot of backstory that still I didn't have, and some of the names were very complicated. So a number of the characters would have 2 or 3 different names, and they'd be referred to them in different ways. It did take me a while to get into that. But once I connected with that, I really enjoyed it. I started to figure out who the people were, who the War Master was, and what the general pattern, the slow build-up to him committing heresy and what that was all going to be about. Moving on, we then read False Gods, and that was quite an interesting one as well. That gave me more details again. Again, it's a very slow build-up, and you meet characters and then they get killed off. But one of the cool things about it is that there is that running theme. For example, the character of Loken seems to stay right the way through, even if you do meet him in various stages with different names, and he does. Sometimes you think he's a good guy, and other times you think, well, I'm not sure about that decision that he's made in that particular regard. So there's quite a lot of history of him in particular within this one. And again, you can see by the title, the False Gods idea, as to where the sort of plot line is going, the betrayal and all of that sort of idea. The Galaxy in Flames was the next one, and you saw even more of the different groups of Space Marines, the different legions, the different alliances that they have, some of the history behind those, some of the big battles that they've fought in, and then there's links again, so the character Loken links in with the story as well. Okay, so that was another good one. I enjoyed that one. I think my favorite one was this one, the Flight of the Eisenstein. And again, you see the betrayal really come to fruition. All right, some pretty horrific stuff happening, and it is that idea that he is given a choice. The War Master, all the way back in here, is given the choice. What does he do? And what he doesn't understand is that it's a bit of a flawed choice, okay? Because there's all sorts of machinations happening in the background that he wasn't aware of, and the betrayal has been set up for years and years before, and all sorts of different tangents have come in to sort of basically load the dice with regards to his decisions that he makes. So this one was quite exciting because it was like that sort of race against time. Are they going to get to Terra to warn Horus about the betrayal of the War Master? Spoiler alert in case you haven't read them yet. But it is a really good read. Okay. Then we went to Fulgrim. Now Fulgrim kind of takes a different step, and it starts really integrating what is a background character, so to speak, the idea of the chaos, all right, that is there, and how that chaos then affects and impacts upon the actual Space Marines in and of themselves and corrupts them to the extent where they become something new, something different. And the Fulgrim story is quite a there's a lot in there that's a little bit grim, but again, it's that idea about making one decision and having that then being your legacy, so to speak. Right, so that was that one. Now I got to there, and then handily, a lot of the books will have at the front of them, the lists of what other books there are to read. They'll have a lists of all the different characters, the titles, etc., that are within each of the books. But what you find is that the actual Horus Heresy has about 40 something books in the actual series, and the first 5 to 6 of those books are quite a continuous story, but then it sort of jumps to different legions and different battles, and it's more standalone. So when I talked then about what I would do, whether I would continue on reading the Horus Heresy stories, I then got introduced to the Siege of Terror branch, of the Horus Heresy stories, and the first of that is the Solar War, and I'm almost finished that. I've got very near the end of it. Now there's the Horus Heresy stories, it's all in there. All right, the Solar War and the Siege of Terror stories, there's only about 6 or so of those, and then they marry again quite nicely with each other. There's some pretty brutal and pretty disturbing sort of imagery where you see the chaos unfolding. There's mass battles, particularly in here. I haven't obviously seen the next couple of books. I've got them queued up and ready for me to read. And the story just gets deeper and richer, and the unfortunate thing is that some of the characters that you really liked, or some of the characters that you'd read these long epic stories about, end up either being corrupted and turning completely bad, or possibly dying. And there are some cases in here where characters you've been reading about, I'm still not 100% sure, there's one plot line that they haven't finished off in this, and I don't know whether that particular character is going to become bad and corrupted, or whether they're even going to die and not make it to the next book. But that, again, I enjoyed it. A lot of really epic space battles and mass destruction in space, and there's also the strategicness of it. They discuss why they're doing what they're doing. Sometimes you don't see the grand scheme of the plan, all right, until it kind of unfolds within the chapters, but then you get to see that sort of warfare strategy happening. So it is very good if you're interested in that sort of an idea. So I do recommend the Horus Heresy. The only caveat with that, it is 40 books long. So if you are wanting to read the entire lot, then that's going to take you a while. But yes, the first 5 or 6 books, and then maybe, as I have done, Patrick's recommendation, jump then into the Solar War and the Siege of Terror, and there's a couple of other chapters, books within there that I'll then start reading and having a look to. I've really enjoyed the series, and I'm enjoying that even in this one, which is 40 plus books later, there's still Loken. He's still floating around. He hasn't died, along with a number of other characters who have, and he still seems to be, at this point at any rate, on the right path. So we'll see where we go from there. Just thought I'd do a bit of a review about the stories, the Warhammer sort of background, and what it is I've been thinking about. Good reads, and yeah, so have a great day.